Hello everyone, I'm Joel Schemmel and welcome to a special edition of Talking Trends. Normally we're obviously talking about luxury real estate and what's happening in Sarasota, and I think in light of the recent storms Helene and Milton, I thought it more prudent to dig into what the world is like now in Sarasota, where we are, how we're rebuilding, how we're redoing things in light of those storms. And of course I have Nick Cirillo here with me. Nick's been on the show several times with Alliance Insurance here in Sarasota. And I just thought it was a practical discussion of what is the future and what does it look like from a rebuilding insurance perspective and how we focus on it. So obviously, Nick, welcome to the show, welcome back.
Yes, thank you, Joel.
I think we did a show, 4 months ago, 3 months ago?
Yeah, right before
how we prepare for these storms. So obviously we were timely.
Couldn't have picked a better time.
And now obviously in light of what has happened, I think we kind of have a reality check on Sarasota that we're not maybe in this bubble that's protected by Indian folklore, but we have reality of what Florida is all about, and we will get storms. I think obviously Sarasota, first time with a direct hit with a hurricane, I think it's amazing to see how this community has come together. It's all positive, it's all rebuilding. We know we'll be better than we were before, but it's gonna take some time and some effort. So I think first and foremost, we've seen a lot of damage, a lot of harm from the storms. What is the practical side of helping people as they move forward?
From an insurance perspective right now, I mean, obviously the devastation has been widespread depending on where you live in town, but the best case that we're really providing clients right now is just to assess your damage. Don't feel rushed in times like this where you're going through it mentally, emotionally, physically, cleaning up things. You have a whole year to file a claim. So if you feel that your losses have not really amounted to what your deductible may be, don't worry about it right now. You're obviously, as a homeowner, going to pick up the pieces and put that house back the way it was before, just keeping track of your receipts, detailed itemized list of what maybe was damaged, and tallying that up. And over the course of the next month, really, will give you a much better perspective. We're about 2 weeks out from the hurricane making landfall. So it's still very fresh, still very on the top of most people's minds. There's a ton of contractors out there right now. There's unfortunately some price gouging, things like that. So maybe some things that people want to take care of, they don't have the means to take care of because the cost is like double or triple what it may be. But just be patient, keep it on track of your itemized list is the best thing to do at this point.
I love it because I think we're all in that same mode, right? We're like rush, let's get this done. And I think it is nice to know we have some time to work through it, like you said, potentially a year to make a claim. So it does take a little bit of pressure off of the situation, because I think we don't really know the extent of everything until we live through it for the next couple weeks, month.
Right. You just don't really haven't had any rain since the storm. So like maybe you have a roof leak and you just don't know it, stuff like that. So it'll take time just to get somebody out there to look over all of your stuff.
Great. I love that practical advice for everybody today. So what's the next step? Obviously it is about filing claims. It's kind of how the process works. Can you just give us a quick snapshot of how the process works?
Yeah, so really it just boils down to, let's say we'll focus on more coastal to start, because you have the wind and flooding aspect for most of this event. So if you had a loss to your house where you could clearly see wind was damaged, or wind damaged your roof, and then you saw that the surge came in on the lower level, you have a high water mark in the house that you can clearly see this was flood water. You're gonna wanna start by filing those 2 claims with each respective carrier. So calling the home insurer for the 1 claim, calling the flood insurer for the 2nd claim. If you just know right out the gate, you looked at your policies, you saw your deductibles, and you said, this is definitely way above this amount. Let's get the ball rolling. Start to get the adjusting team out there to have a licensed claim adjuster come out on site, look through your house very thoroughly. They've got all sorts of gadgets, equipment, moisture readers, just to kind of see what the house has taken on and what needs to be fixed. So that's really the first step, is calling the company directly. But as the agent, you can obviously call me first, message me. We're getting a ton of those calls. That's what we're here for. As you said, we've kind of put on a bunch of different hats right now as insurance agents. Sales has taken a back seat. We're really out there just focused on the clients and trying to make sure that they can get their house back in timely order. There's still people living elsewhere that were displaced from the storm. So just making sure that they can at least have some normalcy as quickly as possible.
No, I think, again, really important. I think we touched on in our last segment, we do have to think for people who haven't lived in Florida, or even people who've lived here don't understand the different policies, the flood policy versus the wind or hurricane policy and how it works.
Right.
They're truly two separate separate policies and two separate avenues, basically.
Truly, yes.
That you have to pursue.
Still to this day, we get a lot of that just commentary saying, oh, I have hurricane damage. Well, once we ask the questions and we get into finding out what actually happened,
right.
It's hurricane damage, but you have to delineate it between a flood loss and a hurricane loss with wind. So that's going to be the most important thing, is for those folks that do have the two policies, which most coastal homes do,
right.
Just finding out what your limits were on that policy. Some things that you may have had coverage for, may not have had coverage for, just depending on the type of policy, is really what we're here for, and just trying to help folks out to give them an idea of what they're looking at.
Right. And I think that brings up a good point. Obviously, again, advice, don't rush through these things. Obviously, take your time and really figure out where you are really in both policies, because there may be some gray area between the two policy claims as well. But it brings up another point. I mean, the reality, right, is sometimes we have to figure out how our deductibles play into all of this. I think, certainly that's something I'm dealing with, how do the deductibles play in. Certainly for many of my clients, it's a reality of looking at that flood policy, at that hurricane policy, trying to figure out, whether they have enough damage to make claims
right.
under one or the other, or how it all works. But that's a common analysis, right?
Yeah, traditionally your flood deductible is going to be a lot less than your home policy deductible, because for hurricanes, more often than not, it's a percentage deductible of what they insure the house for. So 2% is the common one.
Right.
They can go 5%, 10%. There are a couple companies out there that still do what's called a flat deductible. So it's like $1,000 or $2,500 or $5,000, whatever the customer may have chosen. But the overwhelming majority is going to be 2%. So if you're looking at your policy and you see that 2% number, that's where it comes from.
Right. And I think that's really important to delineate, because I think, like you said, most of my clients looking at the flood, it's relatively easy and straightforward because those deductibles are pretty low.
Like 5 to 10 grand, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yep.
The hurricane or wind deductibles becomes more complicated, right?
Yes.
It's, and I've even called you personally for a couple clients and said, how does this work? How does this work?
Right.
And I think, and I think you have to look at it, obviously, traditional home ownership is pretty straightforward. Your home, how it works from the flood and hurricane deductible. Obviously, we have many condos here in Sarasota on the beach or downtown or wherever, where it's actually more complicated to a certain
HOA
extent.
policy, you got your personal policy. There could be assessments, just depending on what happened and what community grounds got damaged, to where now everybody in that HOA, whether or not you had damage or not, would have to pay for that repair.
Right, and I think that's what's interesting as we kind of make our way through, because this is new experience for Sarasota, so we're all getting our hands into it and understanding the impacts. But it is some of my condo listings, I'm having to look at exactly how their deductibles would work, right? And is there going to be potentially a special assessment just to cover the deductible for the wind, right? For the wind alone. So again, those are all things we're kind of weave through, and each building is different. Every property is different,
right?
And
I think this is really a good way to spin it, is that it's an opportunity for everybody, including myself, yourself, to kind of just look and see at what life looks like after a big hurricane. Because to your point, I've lived here my whole life, you've lived here a long time. Anybody who's been in Sarasota has always kind of had that same mentality that we're secured, we're protected, nothing really has come through here in the last however many years. So this is going to be a good learning curve for people that maybe didn't know what was excluded, or that they're responsible for XYZ if they're in a condo form of ownership. So for the next one, you don't have to be worried about it. You're going to have peace of mind. You're going to have all the answers after going through something like this. So if anything, it should give you some more power. Knowledge is power. I think that's going to be the key takeaway from a catastrophe like this.
Yep. And I agree. I think that, like you said, knowledge is power in our aftermath and how we deal with it, and just kind of how we make decisions going forward.
Yeah.
Because things are different now, and we have to look forward through it. And I think, again, the storm is gone. We know what we're dealing with now. So I want this all to be on a positive note. I think
totally
there is, Sarasota, sympathy goes out to everybody who lost things, businesses, et cetera. I mean, it is, there's energy though, power in the rebuild mode in Sarasota. So I think that's what you have to, the silver lining, right? Take that away. Everybody's positive. I have clients reaching out to me right and left. How can we support people? How can we support businesses? So I think, again, super good energy.
Yeah, so I want to compound on that. I mean, we are super lucky to live in this community. I feel very blessed. Sarasota in entirety has really just stepped up. Neighbors helping neighbors, people have been nice. There's just a lot of love and energy that you can tell is palpable in the air. So I feel that, as a community who's seen it all here, this is definitely the strongest that we've been, and we'll come back, we'll be fine, we'll get through it.
Exactly, and I think, and that's why I think, we are spinning this forward. I think, the real estate market's going to evolve as a result of these storms, and we don't know exactly what that looks like, but we will see the evolution. Different things will happen throughout the market. But again, I want to take this positive and take it forward. So I guess one of the points and it's interesting, even kind of before this all happened, we were having a side discussion about some other things that were coming on the insurance market. And even before we went on air, I think, want to give a reality check, right? So it's not quite like Ian. The insurance market has not frozen like it did after Ian.
I think we all learned after Ian in insurance what to do, what not to do. So as an agent, we can only control so much, but on a company level, these insurance companies after Ian really got things together after Ian. That was the biggest disaster that the state had probably seen in 20 years, above Irma, in my opinion. So after that, I think all the good companies that we represent kind of went back to the drawing board and said, if this happens again, or when this happens again, what are we going to do and how are we prepared to do it differently? So with this time around, we had the storm come, everything shut down, which is normal procedure. They're not going to write insurance while there's an impending storm. But afterwards was when everything kind of showed itself that, hey, these companies aren't going to be closed for a month, 2 months at a time. They were open within a week to 10 days at most. And everything was normal business as usual. They had more staffing on hand. The claims procedure, I didn't have a bunch of clients calling me saying, hey, I can't reach my adjuster. A lot of the stuff that was just thrown up against the wall from Ian has definitely stuck now, and we're seeing the results of that, and it's been a much more positive experience. And especially for us, going through that in our hometown, to be at ground zero for all that, we have the best insight into kind of the whole process. So I feel very comfortable with the way the insurance market's running right now.
And I think that's a hugely important, piece of information to take away. Things are moving. So again, first question we have, can we even get insurance right now?
Yes. So like I said, sales kind of took a back seat, but that's just because of the profound amount of people that were coming forward with claims. We haven't seen that, but we are still selling insurance. We had closings this month. We'll have closings up to the end of the month. So nothing has changed on that end. We've just put our focus on kind of assisting other clients, but you can still get insurance. To your point, some new products have been coming out, and one of the biggest ones is parametric insurance. That's the one I'm most excited for, because to your point earlier, when Helene was coming through, we didn't know this product was even available yet. And then 2 weeks later, it was, hey, this is a new product that we're going to have, and then Milton hit. So the timing of it was just incredible, but I'll just dig into it here for you.
Yeah, and I think, so just most important thing, life goes on, insurance is still there. The market will bounce back and be there. And we even had a discussion about older homes. Can you ever get insurance for older homes that are built on grade?
Yes, still getting insurance, slab on grade, 1960 homes. We had all the questions thrown at us, and that's not something that we have seen go by the wayside. I think that's just part of the risk of buying a home that's on the water. You accept that the insurance may be more so than it is inland. It's not exorbitantly high to where you can't afford it. It's just going to be a higher price tag. But I think anybody that is buying out on the water understands that up front.
Yeah, it's reality. And I think, again, just a huge marked difference from when Ian hit, when we were frozen in Florida for 30 to 60 days. We were delaying closings. We couldn't get insurance bound.
The rules were changing. Companies were saying, we're not going to take this anymore. It was a much bigger deal, and it felt like it was a bigger shift in the overall market, versus now the companies basically accept that risk up front and say, here's the rate we're going to charge for it. That was the other problem, was that during Ian, they found out they were woefully under the mark on what they should have been charging for those rates out there. And that's kind of, everybody wants to gain market share, so they were just trying to throw the rate out. But again, they wised up, said, here's what we need to do. We're not going to get out of Florida. We're just going to charge the rate that we need to stay in business. And that's why we're able to still write insurance less than 2 weeks after a major hurricane. That's pretty remarkable.
Yep, which is awesome. So again, I think that's super important message to have. So explain what
parametric insurance.
Parametric, yeah.
Yeah, it's very unusual.
And so again, I think part of our discussion is, now that we've seen storm hits, and we talked a little bit about the deductible concept and how it plays into reality for what's out of pocket and what's not out of pocket and how it works. So I think that's where that plays in, correct?
Definitely. So parametric insurance is just so unusual from your traditional forms of like home and flood. Those are always the staple. But what parametric insurance can do is it provides more coverage in areas where there's specific exclusions in those home and flood policies. First off, there's no deductible. So right off the bat, you're going to take away something from that policy. You don't have to worry about meeting a certain threshold before they're going to pay. But more importantly is that there is often areas, especially with coastal homes, where boat lifts, docks, motors, landscaping, landscape lighting, all the things that make a really high value home nice, that is always excluded on home and flood policies. The parametric type of insurance is going to give you full coverage for all that stuff. The measures in which they use the policy for is that there has to be a hurricane, typically, that has to be categorized from the National Weather Service, but the policy starts paying out from a specific sustained wind. So on personal lines, it starts at 65 miles an hour. So it's actually below what a hurricane is rated for. But at 65 miles an hour and it's sustained winds, so that means winds for 60 seconds in a row are sustained at 65 miles an hour, they will start paying and the percentages will grow. So it starts at 1% at 65, it goes all the way up to 130, which is the max payout on the policy. So I'll give you an example. If you purchased $100,000 on a parametric policy, that would mean that you took out a policy that would pay no more than $100,000 for that policy term. And depending on the wind speed, so I'll give you another example, is that the Sarasota-Bradenton Airport, they recorded sustained winds of 102 miles an hour. That's just what Herald Tribune was reporting. So if you take that and you look at your policy, the scale on the policy, so all this information is given to you up front, so you don't have to worry about what am I gonna get paid?
Right.
Is the adjuster gonna nickel and dime me for this? It's all black and white. You will see what your payout is by just looking at the scale. You find 102, it says 38% next to it. So you take the 38% of 100,000, it'd be $38,000. So that's what you'd be looking for in a type of policy where you don't have to worry about meeting that deductible threshold. More so, I'm getting a ton of calls from people that say XYZ is damaged, but I know that that's not part of their policy coverage, so it doesn't go towards the deductible. Versus the parametric policy, you start to get paid from $1 all the way up to whatever that max wind speed was that was recorded. So it's very unusual.
Right.
It's unique.
I mean, super interesting. And again, insurance for normal people's complicated.
Yes.
So this is technically another layer.
Yes, it's not going to replace your home insurance or your flood insurance. This is something that most folks over the past 2 years, really since Ian, have actually asked, how can I get my rate lower? Everything's going up. How can I shave off coverage, take more risk on myself? And that's all fine. But after going through something like this, maybe now the client says, well, now after I went through this hurricane, I actually had more damage than I thought I would have going through something like this. But my deductible is like $20,000. So personally, if I had a $20,000 hurricane deductible, I would take out a $20,000 parametric policy so that it at least helps me to get my feet on the ground after a storm, because most folks don't have the claim to turn in for $20,000. But with parametric, you'd start at least getting $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 right away to go ahead and start repairing some of the damage that was left behind after the storm.
And I think that is, kind of the unique position of this product is that, again, typical hurricane insurance is not going to cover a lot of things. And I gosh, Category 3 Sarasota, we took a direct hit, but the reality is most of the damage was, I hate to say most of the damage, exclude the flood and the surge part of it, but a lot of the damage was docks, seawalls, pools, etc. That generally are
landscaping, lighting, which is expensive on the outdoors. So you don't get anything for that. You didn't get anything for that. The other part is that the parametric policy covers wind and flood. There is no delineation. It's just whatever happens in that event. So it's a triggered event. It gets triggered when that sustained wind reaches 65 miles an hour. As long as that's occurring and it was a part of a tropical system that was categorized by the National Weather Service, that's when your coverage will start to begin. So you don't have to worry about, I didn't buy flood, or I excluded wind on my homeowners, so now I'm completely out of pocket on this. This is a very unique opportunity for people that don't want to break the bank and spend all their money on home and flood insurance. Maybe take some of that risk off the table by having a parametric policy. You could even look at it as if I had a 5% deductible on my home insurance and I was able to take out a parametric policy to kind of offset some of that loss. It's supposed to give you just a little bit of extra something after the storm.
So my understanding is this really is a unique policy, kind of separate from flood and from wind or hurricane.
Yes.
And so how does it work? Can you have one or the other or any of the above, or?
Yeah, so if you just said,
alone,
if you owned your house outright, you didn't have a mortgage, let's say you just wanted to protect it from more of a catastrophic risk, and you didn't want, if you live on the water and you don't want to spend the $10,000, $20,000 a year in annual cost carry-in for insurance, you could just take out a parametric policy, pick the limit that you are comfortable with. They'll write up to $5 million. So you could go as low as 10 grand for coverage, you could go as high as 5 million, anywhere in between that. You pick the terms and you'll see what the premiums are. I mean, right now, they're pretty affordable from what I saw on the one policy that I've already written. It was an inland house. It was $1,000 a year for $20,000 in agreed value coverage. So I just don't see that as something that's gonna break the bank, if anything, because there's no property damage required. That's the other unique part of this, is that you could be displaced from your house because there's no power, something that's completely out of your hands. But going through a hurricane, a lot of people were without power here locally. If you couldn't live in your house, but had no damage elsewhere, that would be something that you could claim under that policy. So there's no property damage that's required, which again is very untraditional from a regular home insurance policy.
And again, I think that's what makes it super unique, because I think we're always thinking we need the adjuster here to do this and before we can get any payout, right? But this is unique.
It's very unique. It's really black and white. Just knowing upfront when you agree on that policy, you will see the breakdown of each percentage for the wind field and what that correlates to a payout. So you'll know all your information up front, and that's gonna be the best way for a homeowner to really get through the next 5, 10, 15 years that they live out here. If that's something that they're considering, is my biggest drawback is living out there and not having coverage during a storm. I think that's most people's immediate knee-jerk reaction is, can I get insurance, which we've already talked about, and how much is it gonna cost? And even if I get all this stuff, I still have clients saying, well, things on my lower elevation are not gonna be covered traditionally on a FEMA policy, and they're right. But that's why a parametric policy would be a much better fit for them, because it takes the entire event and it doesn't distinguish between flood or wind. It just says any damage that happens during this event, if this requirement is met where the sustained winds reach 65 or higher, we're going to pay you. I mean, you can't beat that. That really breaks down all of the walls that most people have when it comes to insurance, that they never pay, there's slimy companies, we hear it all, but, and there's probably some fairness to all that, but this is supposed to be a better way for you to feel comfortable about insuring your house and not have to go through all that riffraff.
So incredibly simple.
Yes.
Which makes it interesting and very tangible.
Yes.
And I think kind of in this post-storm world where we're dealing with this, I mean, it's an interesting product, right? And maybe the timing is
perfect.
Perfect.
I think it's literally perfect,
And so again, it's another element to consider as you look at your world going forward and how it plays out for you personally. Because it's always a personal choice. I mean, obviously, if you have a mortgage, you're gonna have requirements by your lender, but otherwise, there's a lot of choices for insurance or self-insure even. Obviously, I have several clients who self-insure.
I think that's where a lot of this will actually come to fruition, because it is such a new product. I'm the only one in the southwest corner of Florida that's offering it. They just wrote one policy, it was for me, so they really haven't had a ton of experience, but going through it myself with the company has been a eye-opening experience. It's allowed us to really see how it works, just how simple it is, while simultaneously being the agent for insurance and handling other clients' claims and seeing how difficult it has been for some of them to just get up to that figure monetarily to make a claim. It's frustrating, it's confusing for a lot of clients. They don't realize that number does kick in for a hurricane as much as you try to explain it up front. It's just maybe the thought process isn't there that will actually get hit. A lot of people try to block out negative things from happening. But to your point earlier, we've all been through this now, using this as a learning experience and knowing that in the future, we're gonna come out more on top and be better just involved. I think that's the key takeaway.
Awesome. So I think this interesting product, we kind of know a little bit about it now. Obviously, Nick's a great resource. You'll have his contact information at the end of the show, or call me. I'm happy to get it to you. And Nick's obviously helped a number of my clients and me personally, so love all that. Anything else you think we need to talk about in kind of the post-storm world?
Just be patient. I think, I really think like we don't want to understate that, but just being calm right now and not rushing to make decisions and freaking out. Everybody's in this together. Somebody locally is dealing with some sort of damage on some level. So just making sure that you're gonna be okay and you get things picked up in the right manner to start. You can always make that claim within the first year. We're gonna help you and encourage you to make that claim if you have one. but just don't worry about it right now. If you're getting ballpark estimates for repairs that you know are just egregiously high, just try to sit tight, take care of the biggest fires first, and then go from there.
Great. I think that's great advice. Be patient. Kind of make sure you're looking at the big picture, not just running from fire to fire, so to speak, because it is a process and it will take some time.
Yeah, and a lot of the times going through something like this, a lot of people are like, I'm moving, I'm getting out of here. And then you start thinking about, well, where am I gonna go? Right. And where, if I go, is gonna have no natural disasters, no sort of issues. Everywhere in the States is going to have something negative that could happen to you. I think just accepting that where you live will have that, and doing your part and making sure that you're comfortable with the outcome, whether it's the insurance or where you're located. That's the biggest thing that everybody needs to take away.
Yeah, no, I think it's important advice. And again, as I always say, I'm from the Midwest. We always had tornadoes and flooding and all those things there as well. And so, I mean, the beauty of it, right, is we saw these storms coming. We could make decisions about what we were going to do personally. Our stuff is our stuff. It doesn't really matter in the end.
Yeah, at least you have time to prepare. On a tornado, it's like you got 10 minutes. And an earthquake, you got no time. So with hurricanes, you do have some time to prepare. I think a lot of people just maybe have not had an active plan in the past, but after something like this, they will certainly make more of a note to have certain things lined up in order, not be the last one rushing to the store, not getting the gas last minute. I know that was a big thing for folks, but I feel like this was a big learning curve for a lot of people. We're in the business that we kind of see this more on a daily basis, even outside of storm season, because those are the questions that are prompted to us, but now it's such widespread. I think this, coupled with the parametric policy that's going to be rolling out, will give people more comfortableness moving forward.
Right. And again, I think that's the message, right? We understand a little bit more how this all works. I think it will get better and more efficient as we move forward. And I think, again, Sarasota is, as strong as ever.
We're resilient.
It's all
community.
positive.
Yeah, it is. It's all positive. We're going to get through it.
Yep.
I can't believe we're doing this just less than 2 weeks. That just shows we're resilient in our occupations. We're here, we're helping people, but yet we want to get the word out that the city isn't underwater. We're going to be okay. Just like any other hurricane that's made landfall in the last 10 years in Florida, those communities bounce back. And Sarasota is going to be no different. And in fact, I feel we'll be more on top of it.
Love it. Yep, Sarasota strong. Thank you again for joining us for this episode of Talking Trends. We'll see you next time.